Welcome back to Hardball. The Drudge Report had an eyebrow-raising headline last night. The conservative website, which is known to have close ties to the Romney campaign, reported that a surprise Veep choice had emerged as a frontrunner, former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. A few weeks ago, Rice delivered a rousing speech at a gathering of big-money donors that was greeted very enthusiastically by people in the audience. But she carries a truckload of political risks. Most significant is her time in the Bush White House and some of her views on social issues that don't jive with the conservative base of the Republican Party. For example, she's pro-choice. Still, the fact that this is coming out now and the fact that it's coming from Drudge has led many to wonder, what's going on here exactly? Nia Malika Henderson is a political reporter for The Washington Post. Robert Costa is a political reporter for National Review. Nia Malika, let me begin with you. Is this all a diversion to take attention away from Bain, where that issue appears to have gathered traction in the last couple of weeks?
Well, it certainly turned out to be that way. Here we are talking about this story that the Romney campaign pretty easily knocked down that and drew lots of suspicion from folks here in Washington and skepticism. So it certainly seems that this is a way to divert attention from what everyone has been talking about this week, Bain revelations, Mitt Romney's tax returns. So it certainly has worked out that way, too. And I think another point to be made is here was a week where Mitt Romney went before the National Association of Colored People and was booed. And in some ways, it's not necessarily coincidental that days later he comes out with a story, or his campaign comes out with a story where it seems to be that they are vetting a very high-profile African-American, and in some ways sending the signal that the Republican Party is an inclusive one, which is a message they certainly need to send to independent voters.
Robert, conservative blogger Eric Erickson was quick to dampen the speculation last night when he wrote, I don't know who is hitting the crack rock tonight in the rumor mill, but bullshit-taki mushrooms. Condoleezza Rice is pro-abortion. She worked for George Bush for 8 years. Could conservatives look past the social positions that she has, most notably on the choice issue, because they'd be thrilled to have a legitimate neocon sharing that ticket?
First, I think Eric's right. Beyond those drug references, every single Romney source I've spoken with today has thrown cold water on top of this rumor. They say that Romney's running his Veep search like it's a consulting project. He's very meticulous. He has names like Tim Pawlenty, Rob Portman, Paul Ryan that are part of that finalist. Condi's the one that's being floated by those people who went to that Utah retreat, people who really had found her speech to be fantastic, and they're buzzing to reporters. But inside of that Boston High Command, I don't think Condi's a short lister. But let's say she was an outside pick, like you said. I think social conservatives would have some concerns. They may make a stink at the convention in Tampa. They could cause a stir on the floor. But I think the frustration towards the president is so strong that even though Romney promised he would pick a pro-life candidate for VP, if he picked someone who was, quote, mildly pro-choice, as Rice describes herself, I think the anger towards the president would still get social conservatives out to the polls in November.
Well, Nia Malika, maybe here's an indication of what social conservatives would do. Dr. Rice found a surprising supporter last night on Fox. Sarah Palin said she likes the idea.
I think that Condoleezza Rice would be a wonderful vice president, and she certainly has much more experience than our sitting president does today. I would certainly prefer a presidential and vice presidential candidate who had that respect for all innocent, precious, purposeful human life and showed that respect via being a pro-life candidate. We need to remember, though, that it's not the vice president that would legislate abortion, and that would be Congress's role, and we'll keep that in mind.
Nia Malika, this would be interpreted as throwing the long ball, don't you think? This would be like a Palin pick in the 2012 cycle. And if anything, I've been anticipating that Mitt Romney will do something very conservative, not politically conservative, but very conservative in terms of the selection.
That's right, a safe choice, and nothing certainly to ostracize this evangelical base, which is so important in terms of energy. I talked to some top evangelicals today, and they were apoplectic with this idea that it could be Condoleezza Rice because of her stance on life. And it's not even to say that they wouldn't necessarily show up at the polls, but there wouldn't be energy. There wouldn't be that fire in the belly among evangelicals, and it would send a signal to them and sort of remind them of some of the reservations they've already had about Romney around the issue of abortion. So I just think it's very, very unlikely. And I think evangelicals in some ways have been in touch with the Romney campaign, expressing their disappointment with this idea. But again,
well, this might be an indication.
I'm not so sure.
This might be
that
an indication of what you're
right.
talking about. Hang on a sec, because I want you to see this. Governor Mike Huckabee today said that it would be a big mistake for Romney to pick Condoleezza Rice. Watch this.
I think Romney would have a real problem because of her weakness on the issues such as sanctity of life. Romney has promised that he will have a pro-life vice president. That was a promise that he made during the campaign because it was expressly asked. And anything less than that, and I think you're going to see a lot of conservatives.
It would reaffirm for them their doubts about how committed he is to that.
It would be a disaster.
Hey, Rob, this creates a lot of buzz. Does an eventual selection of a Tim Pawlenty or a Rob Portman then look boring by comparison?
Sure, of course it's boring compared to Condoleezza Rice. But I think Romney's comfortable with boring. He's running a very steady campaign, not excitable at all. But I think the initial response to Condoleezza Rice's pro-choice views is not entirely accurate about how the conservative base would respond. If you read her memoir, first of all, she's a Notre Dame graduate. She went to a Catholic university, one of the best in the country. At the same time, she's very family-oriented. Though she does not have a family of her own, she grew up in a strong household, strong parents, taught her well. She has a great story to tell. When I spoke to Republican operatives today, they like Condi's story. They don't think she's going to be picked, but they like her story, and they think she could craft a narrative that would appeal to social conservatives. But I think you're right. Romney's the kind of guy who's looking at someone who's Midwestern, evangelical, someone who's comfortable with the base. So you have Pawlenty. The only thing going against Portman is his Bush experience, but Pawlenty and Portman bring the same kind of political persona to the ticket.
I think you're right. Nia Malika Henderson, thank you. Robert Costa, good to have you back.